Welcome back to another Analyst Hour. We're about to kick off the 2024 season. We just announced who is entering the draft pool. You guys are probably going to see a lot of familiar faces, some new faces, and unfortunately, we'll be missing some ASL legends this year. Unfortunately, a lot of spontaneous retirements, or maybe they're taking a season two hiatus to pursue other ventures in their lives. But nonetheless, it's going to be a great season. Of course, I'm joined by my co-host Michael Goldsmith. How has the offseason been for you?
It's been a great off season. Obviously missed the league. Haven't got out there as much as I'd like, and I think a lot of players can say the same. But looking forward to getting back out there with all the returning guys and the new faces we have coming into the league. It should be a great season.
Yeah, it's going to be great. So Mike, I would love for you to give a brief rundown of the player movement in the ASL this past offseason. I know we have a lot of fans from around the world. Some people may have filed it or have just forgot it, but can you just remind us for everyone, what were the huge blockbuster player updates for the past year?
Yeah, so I think the most glaring one is the absence of Ian Chowdhury, who was the foundation of the league, played every single season, was the GOAT early on. His impact to the league can't be understated. I don't know if it was an official retirement or a season hiatus, but no one can replace what Ian brought to the league in terms of not just his play, being a great captain, first round talent, teammate, leader. You can't replace that. But he changed the league for the better. The league wouldn't be what it is without him today. His commitment, this league, when players at Ian's level have that level of commitment, it shakes the entire league, and that's what he
Contagious.
brought. And you can't replace that. So that's the most glaring one. Do you want me to go through all the departures or just the?
Real quick, just do it. Fire away.
So obviously we have Ian, we have Rishi Srinivasan, we have Rang Navkal, Alex Trottier because of injury, unfortunately, which really sucks. Nick Zelanskis and Steve Troy round out the players from last season that will not be returning this year.
Very unfortunate. We will miss them dearly. But we have a lot of new rookies and we have a lot of people who are stepping up and playing. We're excited to have them. But we've also had a lot of movement within the captains. Obviously, Michael shared that we lost a captain. Rishi Srinivasan will not be returning this year. But what a lot of people may not know is one of the former captains, Ryan Cadigan, is actually stepping down and declared himself for the Anniversary Ball League 2024 draft. So Ryan Cadigan will be entering the draft pool. One of the other lucky captains will be able to have the captain caliber and maturity and the mindset on their team, but as a draftee, which is pretty exciting. And I guess with that, we should say a common draftee is stepping up to take on his role as the first for his first season as captain, technically his second, but it will be his first year as official captain. That is going to be Kostas Zantzopoulos. A lot is going to happen. A lot has been happening, but today we're just going to do some pretty high level things. I would love to talk about, each captain, where they're at, their expectations. This is pre-draft, so I would love to kind of just give our diagnosis for each captain, who they should be looking for in the round. Obviously, we don't know exact order yet, but we can kind of tell where they're going to fall based on their skill. Obviously, Stephen Shaw will be getting the last pick. Casa will be getting the first. So we know exactly, where their opportunities to pick up certain players are going to be. So let's definitely talk about that. So first, captain's expectations. The rookie captain, Kostas Zantzopoulos. Michael, what are your expectations for Costa?
I mean, I think a lot of people are going to be surprised that Costa being moved to captain, but he absolutely has the talent to do it. And he's really transformed his legacy with his commitment to the league, starting with that playoff run of the Stampede last year on the Pride. He had a rough regular season just because I don't know if the system necessarily fit him. But when the moment mattered the most in the playoffs, Costa showed that he was the most talented draftee in the league, and it only made sense to move him up to replace Ryan. So I think he's going to have a great year. I think this is going to be Costa's best season, not just because now it's his team. He's such a good teammate that he often, when he's playing with a captain, whether it be Steve Shaw or Nick Silva, he lets them lead the charge and he finds his shots, he shows his game. But now that he has the full reins of his team, he's going to showcase how talented he truly is, because I don't think his talent has been showcased to its fullest extent in the past 2 seasons. I think this is going to be the best season. I'm going to throw it out there. I think as a captain, I think he could be in consideration for most improved player this season, especially how last regular season went for him. I expect great things. I expect him to be a high scoring option, and I expect him to create a great team atmosphere, because he has always been a great teammate where I think everyone's going to love to play for him, play hard for him. And I have high expectation, and I'm really looking forward to what kind of system he has in place there, and him showcasing his full capabilities instead of being kind of in a certain role.
I completely agree. Costa's one of those special guys where his game is not reliant on any external factors. He is such a shot creator. He can create his own his chances, his opportunities, and he's very good at taking them as well. So obviously, the whole getting drafted to Stephen Shaw, everyone was kind of up in arms. That one, he was a second round draft pick, but two, he's going to Stephen Shaw. He did a very good job kind of taking a passive role. He's one of those guys where magic happens when the ball is in his hands, and unfortunately, he didn't really have a ton of opportunities for that last year, but now he does. And also, he can kind of sit back and build his own team around him. So he should go into every single pick thinking, how is this going to complement me? How is this going to complement Costa? And all these players are going to be looking at him to make the moves. And I think that is a great position for Costa to thrive in. He is incredibly good at, like I said, making his own opportunities, creating his own shots. I have very high expectations for Costa, and I will jump on your take that he could really be in the running for most improved player this year. We'll close that door there. I guess we'll get it over with. The GOAT, Stephen Shaw, obviously coming back. He's going to be leading the Dogs this year. What are our expectations for Stephen? What are we going to do?
I mean, it's hard to say championship or bust when it's Steve Shaw and he has 3 in a row. He's obviously the solidified GOAT. I think he could be eliminated in the first round and still hold his GOAT legacy, depending on who wins the championship. I think he's going to have another great year. I'm sure he's going to aim to run it back with Pat and supplement it with 2 other good players. But yeah, I just would expect another great year. I mean, we've talked about Steve a lot in this pod. There's only so much we could add, but he's hard to doubt, and you could put almost anyone on his team and you could probably say he's the favorite. But I do think that
I
he's
think
going to
Vegas would
face.
agree.
Yeah, but I do think that I don't think it's a lock or anything. I think that there's going to be some great contenders with the roster we do have, but Steve should be headed for another great season. I don't know how much more you could add to that.
Yeah, I definitely don't want to beat a dead horse here, but it's Stephen Shaw. The expectation is there. I hope the other captains and other teams really focus on stopping him. I think I always praise Colin for making a huge move last year and breaking up the trio that was AJ, Pat, and Steven. Pat is a great talent. That's obviously going to be in the draft pool this year. Unfortunately for other guys, and very fortunately for Steven, I think Pat gets drafted in the right position every year, which is towards the end of the first round. But if any of the captains really need a skilled guard in the first round, I would say don't be afraid to take Pat. He is the epitome of a skilled guard, and that also really hurts the shot of Steven being able to win again. I don't know how much, considering how good he is, but it would be kind of nice to see the league be shooken up like that. We'll probably be seeing him late July. So we'll move on from there. The return of Nick Silva. Nick Silva had a roller coaster of a rookie season in the ASL. I believe he started 0-3 with the Stampede.
Yeah.
I think despite having the second best Vegas odds to win the championship preseason, I believe it was plus 275. Went down 0-3. Everyone knew the talent was there on the team, but due to lack of attendance and things just not clicking, I think everyone's kind of started to write them off. Something switched. Nick Silva led his team, the Stampede, to an absolute rumble into the playoffs. Obviously, getting past the Super Pandas, who have the best regular season record in ASL history, beat them, and then obviously went to the ASL finals. He's making a return, and this year will be leading the Black Bears. Mike, what are your expectations for Nick?
I mean, yeah, Nick, and you can't give him enough credit for starting 0-3. Him and Cole Chingris were both rookies at the time, started 0-3. they could have easily given up. They could have easily not tried as hard. They could have easily not shown up. And they deserve all the credit in the world that season for coming back and really making it to the finals and giving Steve Shaw a fight in the finals. It was a close game. So I think Nick is set to have another great season. I think he's probably, I mean, he's up there in the most talented captains, and I think he knows what he needs, which we'll talk about later, to supplement him and his championship aspirations. But it's awesome to have someone of his level back who in his rookie year showed like he tried incredibly hard and it paid off for him, and he practiced, and I would just expect him to come back wanting to finally cement his legacy, have his mark in the league, get that championship ring. And I think he is a formidable force to do that this year. So it's great having him back. And he's arguably the best defensive captain, which means that he's going to be guarding all those other captains and is probably the most equipped to take them out of the game more than anyone else. So he's not only going to bring, great offensive talent to his league, but he's going to really nullify the other captains to a certain extent when he's guarding them, which is why he made the playoff run, especially his defense on Colin that Super Panda series. So I expect big things from Silva as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really excited to see Nick Silva back in uniform and lead his team. One thing that Nick Silva really displays on the league is the importance of mindset. I mean, the guy showed up once he really locked in. He showed up every week, headset on, not talking to anybody, really just focused. And it obviously translated to the court, which translated to victories. So obviously, when you have people like Colin who really focus on preparation, it is really cool to see another approach on how to win games, and that is mindset, and that's Nick Silva. So it's really cool to see. There are so many different ways to win these games, and Silva kind of showing that mindset and the importance of that is really cool to see. I'm really looking forward to having him back and seeing who he leads and how far he leads them this year. Now we will jump to Colin. Obviously an ASL legend, very much in the GOAT conversation up until last year when Stephen Shaw really solidified himself. Colin honestly has a lot to prove this year, just because I hope people don't write him off as just being in Stephen's shadow, but I wouldn't blame them for thinking that. It's always the Stephen versus Colin show. Stephen always comes out on top. What are your expectations for Colin Kirkpatrick this year?
Colin needs to win this championship more than probably, I think, more than anyone else this year to cement what he's done in the league. Obviously, he already does have that ring under his belt, but this is Colin's year to finally show that he's not just, the second best player in the league. He's not just going to make the finals every year and lose to Steve Shaw. He needs to show that he's a legit talent in his own right. I mean, he's the reigning MVP for a reason, has always been in consideration for that. This is such a big season for his legacy, and he knows that. The whole league knows that. He really needs to draft the right guys around him. I don't think he necessarily made any huge mistakes last draft, but he needs to get the right guys there because he has the talent to win it all, and he comes so close every year. And this is the year he finally needs to get over the hump. And I think he can do it. I also have thought he could do it the past 3 years. Mm-hmm. But I think this is really, Colin just needs to win the championship. And I think for him, anything less should be considered a failure.
Wow. This is definitely the most skilled captains room we've had across the board. So I'm going to be a little bit lighter on Colin, but I know what you mean. I think Colin should be gunning for it this year, as he does every year. I think his drafting is going to be incredibly important. He is someone who's going to need to draft people who show up. He cannot be reliant on subs or fourth man playing the entire game. He needs to draft guys who show up and who are just as bought in as he is, which more often than not he does. He definitely has something to prove. He should be hoping and praying that someone else takes care of Steven in the conference finals so he doesn't have to. Because obviously they're going to be in opposite conferences. But let's say he makes it to late July and he's facing Steven. He needs to well equip himself with the right guys and the right plan and the right mindset to take down Steven. And what Colin does better than any other captain is really targeting the weakness of the opposite team. So that's where I think Steven really needs to make a defensive draft move where he can find guys with no liabilities or no weaknesses, because if he takes that away, Colin doesn't really have any tricks left up his sleeve, because we know what happens when they go Titan v Titan, mono a mono. So that's a thing. I think Colin absolutely can do it. He's one of the most skilled players we've ever had in the league. He drafts incredibly well. I think he's the best leader in the ASL, hands down. And I think it's really just going to boil down to his drafting the right guys. But with that, let's go to another incredibly skilled guy. He would have been my vote for MVP had he not been struck with tragedy. Jack Curtin. What are your expectations for Jack Curtin this year, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, he started last year 4-0 before the tragic injury that you mentioned, and we did our mid-season awards ladder at that point, and everyone had him as their number one pick for MVP. I think everyone in the league did. He it's incredible to have such a pure point guard as a captain who really finds a way right off the bat to put all of his teammates in the right spots. I think he utilized that Carter Brzezinski pick and roll incredibly, and I think that he just the basketball IQ he brings to the league is great. I think he's absolutely a contender, assuming he drafts right, which I'm sure he will. Yeah, the injury really sucked. I think the Hatamotos last year would have been a force in the playoffs if he was there. I'd say he's the closest in terms of talent to Colin and Steve. And I would expect him to have a big year. I expect him to draft smart. I would expect him to come in with the best game plan every week and just always have guys that always have his guys in the right spot. He did a great job last year utilizing the Cole Germano switches, kept them. He always had fresh legs out there because his rotations were great. I think he is probably I don't know. I mean, leadership, I would agree with you that Colin's the best leader, but he's probably the best coach in the league. Just based on how his guy, the system he had, how his guys were always in the right spots, how he utilized the pick. And I would expect him to build off that. And I would expect him to be a force in the playoffs as he would have been last season.
I love it. And I love that you brought up Colin and Jack, and I guess what camps they're in terms of leadership and coaching. I think the difference between Colin in terms of leadership is he's so good at getting you to buy in and say, hey, I need you here and I need you to be able to do these things. And he gets the best out of his players to do that. He's able to put them in foreign territory, and they're able to thrive under his leadership. Where the really cool thing about Jack is he has a much more fluid approach to it. He's able to draw up a scheme where he pretty much allows all of his players to tap into their own skills. And it works, weirdly enough. And I love that you bring up his rotation, because you're absolutely right. He never allowed the other team to get too comfortable or recognize a rhythm, because they simply don't have a rhythm. Whatever scheme they had, the Hatamotos last year, was pretty much flawless. I think the Billies got incredibly lucky getting past them in the playoffs, granted, because of low attendance. They had a forfeit, because Vegas definitely had Hatamotos winning that series. So Jack definitely needs to trap guys with high attendance this year, so that doesn't happen again. So we can really see him in the playoffs when the lights are brightest. I now want to kind of shift gears and talk about someone who, in my opinion, I can write you a whole encyclopedia about Connor Fu and the importance of this season, because I am incredibly high on Connor Fu, but I gotta say something when the mic's over to me. But now I want to hand it over to you, Mike. What's Connor Fu's expectation this year?
Connor Fu, he's won every regular season award that he's been eligible for at least once. He also is someone, I know last year on the podcast we mentioned that he changed the ASL culture because of what he brought to the league, and that is 100% true. Being that good and caring so much, and it shows, and it really echoes through every team he's on. One thing you can never say about any of Connor Fu's teams in the past is that they haven't busted their ass from point 1 to point 21. People play hard for him, and that really matters. He's also a great on-ball defender, kind of similar to Silva, where he will guard that captain and limit them. His three-point probably one of the best pure shooters in the league. I think he really, really needs this. He needs this. Him and Colin both are probably the top two that need this more than anyone else, because his legacy, right now he's a great regular season player, and he hasn't had the results in the playoffs. And you can't put that all on him because he's incredibly talented and he's played great in some playoff series that he's ultimately lost. But he really needs to get over the hump. He at least needs to get to the finals this year and go for a run because he's done everything you could ask of a captain except for that long playoff run. And that obviously in part comes down to drafting. That also comes in part on shot selection, where he for the past 2 seasons has lived and died by the three. And as great of a shooter as he is, it would be great to see him diversify his offense a little more. But I would expect him to want it as bad as anyone, if not more, and would expect him to definitely make the playoffs. And for his sake, he's got to go on a legitimate playoff run this year and put the right guys around him to do that.
I like it. I am so high on Connor Fu. So much so where I would consider myself a Connor Fu fan. If you were to take me out of the ASL and I was watching as a pure spectator, I would be a big fan. I would buy a Connor Fu jersey. I am so high on Connor Fu, and I very much believe in him. And because I am so high on Connor Fu, his shortcomings frustrate me probably more than maybe himself. To me, these past seasons have been full of wasted potential in terms of team success. He is the most decorated ASL player probably in history, right?
Right. Well, I mean, in terms of
Regular
awards,
season history.
in terms of individual awards, yes.
If Connor Fu, and people may call me crazy, but this just shows how high I am on him. I think if Connor Fu won this year, he could give Stephen Shaw kind of like a, you know, I think he inserts himself very much into the GOAT conversation. It shows that Connor Fu has demonstrated so much success on not only individual parts of the game in terms of being an MVP or being a defensive player of the year. We obviously know he has regular season success, and then if he can demonstrate that he can show up in the playoffs, I mean, that's every facet of the game he is able to flourish in. As much as good as Steven is, and he should never even go for depoy because he doesn't really need to. Like that speaks volumes that Connor has pretty much checked off every box except the most important one. But I'm very high on Connor Fu.
So wait, just quick question. So how does one ring and every individual award stack up to Steve Shaw with 3 rings and probably some MVPs and final MVPs?
Yeah.
Is that I'm just wondering, do you think that's a legit conversation to have if he wins the ring?
No, Steven is definitely the GOAT. 3 rings is pretty unbeatable. However, I think he inserts himself in that conversation now. Like, we always talk about Colin with Steve. We always talk about Steve with Colin. I think Connor wins it. We're going to be talking about all 3 of them at the same time. You know what I mean?
Does Connor surpass Colin if he wins the ring this year?
100%.
Okay.
100%.
I'd agree. Yeah.
Like,
all right.
Connor Fu, his resume is the longest ever. He's got every single award except the most important one. I think Connor Fu is in such a season of extremes right now because if he doesn't go far in the playoffs, in my opinion, I think myself and maybe other people are just gonna write him off every year. Where he's gonna go, obviously he's gonna do well in the regular season, but what does it matter? Because as soon as it's over, he's a walkout. However, if he does have a playoff run, and I know he can, that's why I believe in him so much. He could really insert himself into this trifecta of like the Connor, Colin, Steven conversation. That could really be a thing. And he needs to have a really good run in the playoffs. The thing that really makes me pull my hair out with Connor sometimes, and not Connor, but his past 2 teams, I should say, is the shot selection. You said it.
Yeah.
The live and die by the 3 is crazy. Connor is so athletic where he can get any shot he wants when he wants it. He's obviously a top tier defender. This kid can do anything he wants, which is why I hate to see him lose by things that are controllable, like your shot selection. Sometimes, the ball won't go in, or maybe a guy can't show up, things that are out of his control. That's part of the game, but he never loses like that. He doesn't lose like that. It's always self-inflicted. So I really am looking for Connor to absolutely tap in his 3-point shooting because it's incredible, but I need to see him be more versatile, and his draft is going to be very important.
Yeah, well said.
In all, I'm very high on Connor Fu. This is a season of extremes, and I fully believe in him that he can do it. Now we're going to go to Alex Pisacreta. He's got, Pegasus season. He's got the pack under his belt. Um, what are your expectations for Alex Pisacreta?
I think Pisacreta has obviously this is going to be his third season. I believe he is an excellent captain, cares a lot, has always showed it. I think one time he said it was one of the toughest athletic losses when he was eliminated. So when he was eliminated 2 years ago. So it shows how much he cares and shows in his play. It's nice to have a pure slasher. I think we have a good amount of diverse skill sets amongst our captains, which is great. And what Pisacreta brings is a pure slasher that he's gonna try to drive to the rim and finish. You know exactly it's coming, and yet he's still gonna beat you. He still has that quick first step that's gonna blow by you. And when he does that, he possesses the IQ to facilitate and hit his teammates as well. So it's tough. Do you collapse on him, or do you just one-on-one and guard his teammates and eliminate the three? He does an excellent job with that. Great basketball mind, and he needs to get the right guys around him this year to be able to actually contend. I think he came. I mean, I remember last year he came pretty close in game one against Steve in the playoffs. He did a great job eliminating the Galaxy week 7 of the regular season, which would count for something. That was basically a playoff game, Pack Galaxy, and that was Pisacreta took that over. So he is great. He has a great shot to win. Good leader. I think everyone's loved playing for him. And great basketball mind, and his competitive edge and his pure slashing ability that not many other captains, especially with his size too and his quickness, not many other captains have. That he's a game breaker, and it would be nice to see him go on a run. And again, he definitely could if he drafts right and plays to his fullest potential, which I might add, I don't think he played to his fullest potential last season until towards the end of the season. So let's get a full good Alex Pisacreta season of him playing how he should and how he's capable of, and he should have a great year.
Absolutely. My favorite thing about Alex Pisacreta for sure is his competitiveness. That's a guy who can really will himself and his team to win. I think you said it perfectly. His play style is I mean, everyone knows it. It's far from complex, but it really doesn't stop many people because he goes in with his left, puts it up, and before you know it, it's in, and then before you know it, he's done it 4 times in a row on you. So that's a guy who has a really good opportunity to draft some versatile talent around him. He's definitely has the paint scoring under his belt. So I'm very excited to see if he, I guess, where his mind is at in terms of drafting and a well-equipped team, I should say. All right, last but not least, this captain. This will be his third year. He led Andover's team last year, really showed how good of a GM he was preseason. Really showed how good of a player and captain he was. I'm, of course, talking about Nick Resendez. Mike, what are your expectations for Nick this year?
A big question mark is how Nick Resendez is going to fare without Ian this year, which is, I think everyone's asking that because they were just a great tandem in terms of Nick's talent and Ian's leadership. I do think Nick is capable of being a leader. He allowed his fourth man, Tyler Brawley, to flourish. He allowed Campbell to flourish. Ian was great with him. This year, he's not going to have the same level of, you're not going to replace Ian. You need to be more aggressive. You need to show why you are the captain. Obviously, it's great how he gets everyone involved and gets everyone minutes, and he should continue to do that. But he needs to really show, look, he's the captain of the team. He's the main scoring option. He's the best defender in all likelihood. And I think he's so selfless. I don't think it's a lack of effort. I think he's very selfless with his play, and he almost should be a little more selfish because when you're that talented, you should be the guy taking the most shots. And he was relatively efficient last year and didn't average nearly as much as every other captain because of how much he was sharing. Granted, he had Ian, but this season we need an aggressive Nick Resendez. We need one that shoots a lot of shots. We need one who still finds ways to get teammates involved, but makes it Nick Resendez's team. And I think he can do that. I think if he just is a little more selfish, and honestly, and you can't say that about many people, but if he's a little more selfish and aggressive, I think he's going to have a great year. I think he never has showcased how talented he actually is in league play. And I think this is the year to do it. I'm sure he's going to end up with a great talent in the first round to work with him, even though it's not going to be Ian. But It's going to be Nick Resendez's team, and I'm excited to see him show how good he really is, because I don't think we've even seen the full potential yet.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, we know he's going to draft well. We know he runs a great team culture. I think at the end of the day, Nick just needs one thing for success, and you've hit it. It's going to be aggression. He's incredibly good. He's a captain for a reason. We don't give him the first pick. He's obviously a very skilled captain at that. I think he just needs to be aggressive. He needs to be selfish. I think his teammates want that out of him as well, but also with kind of his flexible culture that he runs, it's going to allow them to flourish as well. So that really, at the end of the day, I think Nick just needs to kind of flip a switch in his mind and he'll be successful. Yeah. Enough about us critiquing and praising these captains. Let's actually help them out. We were saying how important the draft is for a lot of these guys. Being such celebrated and acclaimed analysts, we figured we open up a bit of our mind for you guys. And Mike and I are really going to give you the how-to for each of these captains and what type of players we think they should draft. It's going to be realistic, of course, so I'm not going to name a guy who should be going first overall to Stephen Shaw, but it's going to be in the general facility of, it's possible to draft these guys. Before we get into that, I guess we should announce the draft fixing that we've done. So the ASL is fixing rounds 1 and 2 of the ASL draft, meaning Costa, who's going to get the first overall pick in round 1, will also have the first pick in round 2. Then we are snaking it for round 3. So Costa will have round 1 pick 1, round 2 pick 1, round 3 pick 8, and so on. So that's another thing to keep in mind when we do these draft diagnosis, if you will. All right, Costa, first overall pick. Mike, what is the type of player Costa should be looking for with his first round?
I think Costa, being the least talented captain, which isn't a slight at him, he's still more talented than the rest of the draft pool, but Costa just needs to draft the most talented player available. That's his decision, and that is likely going to be between 3 guys, which are Matt Schuerk, Ryan Cadigan, and Louis Gallegani. Now, I know eventually he's going to need some rebounding and defense support, and if he drafted Ryan, you get both the talent and the rebounding and defense all in one pick. But if he needs some scoring to help supplement him, which he needs talent and he needs scoring, which Ryan brings, but Louis Gallegani would also be a great pick in that spot, because Louis, I know this is his rookie year. I know not everyone's had a chance to see him play. He is absolutely a top 3 talent in the league, and him and Costa would be just nightmares for defense game in, game out. And I wouldn't hurt for Costa even go the Matt Schuerk route and get that defense and rebounding and try to pick up a score later on to supplement him, because and Matt Schuerk can also, he's not known as a scorer, but with his size and frame, he knows how to utilize it. He'll do a great job too. So Costa really needs talent, and whether he's going to decide to go all in on talent in the first and get that rebound and defense support later on, try to do a bit of both. This is, as long as he goes with one of those 3 guys, you can't really go wrong if you're Costa.
I'm going to respectfully kind of disagree. I think there's one right choice for Costa, and it is Louis Gallegani. Costa is obviously not as classically trained in basketball as a lot of the other people are. He's obviously very good, but he needs skill. He very much needs skill, and that is Louis Gallegani. Louis Gallegani is pretty much a copy and paste of Costa. They're both very elusive shot creators. Louis claims to be pass first, which is great because they can build that chemistry, but they both can very much score on their own accord. I think it's Louis. I think any other choice is wrong. So I'm in that camp. Round 2, with that being said, he needs to go all in on height/defense. He needs someone to get the boards. He also needs someone who's not going to take away shots from him or Louis. And with that, I think he needs to take George Kamboris or CJ Puglisi. Those are 2 guys who are very much going to be able to get you the rebounds that you need, and don't feel as entitled to put up 10 shots like some other people do. And that's not a spite, but that's just their play style. So that's going to allow them to get the rebounds and their missed shots, have defense covered as well, but also flourish offensively. Who do you think? What type of player should they be gunning for in round 2?
For Costa?
Costa.
Let's say he takes Louis Gallegani. then he really needs that rebound defense support. I'm gonna completely agree with you. Then he should start looking. I think AJ Clark, because even though he's not the tallest, his frame and the way he utilizes it and the way he sets screens would be great. His defense, I think George Kamboris would also
You
be
think
great.
AJ Clark's going round 2?
High end. I mean, we're talking Costa's the first pick in the second round.
Yeah, I guess.
Realistically,
I think someone will scoop him up before, but
think
yeah,
of well,
I'll shut up. Go ahead.
think about no, just think about the Steve Shaw teams. He always would take Pat and AJ. AJ has consistently gone.
But I think AJ stock was skyrocketed after last year.
He
Skyrocketed.
was great. He was great. There's a lot of talent in the first round. I think he's low end first round, high end second round. I could very well see him being available. He could very well not be. I could very much see him being available that first pick in the second round. I think he'd be great. I think George would be great. CJ, and let's say he doesn't fill that. Maybe actually we're not through the third round yet, so I'll hold off. But I think those guys would all be they would all be great in the utility, defense, rebounding to complement his scoring would be great.
All right. And then round 3, I think someone needs to Costa needs to go for. I guess the type of player is just simply a utility guy, someone who's going to play with grit, someone who's going to show up. Definitely puts the team first. I mean, that's what a lot of fourth men go for. A good fourth man is, and I think that's going to be either Jesse Finn. Told me he's 6'2", is very much a pass first forward, or Owen Bollinger. Just like two scrappy guys who are going to be able to get them some extra possessions and allow them to, I guess, Louis and Costa to run the helm and put the ball in the hoop.
Yeah, I almost said Owen Bollinger earlier before I realized that's third round, but I think Owen Bollinger, Jesse Finn gets some, it's the height, the rebounding, the utility helps. Owen Bollinger is one of the better rebounders in the entire league. And that's all you can out of a fourth man. If you have one skill set that you're great at, then you're probably ahead of most of the other fourth men. So I think Owen would be great. And obviously I haven't seen Jesse play, but with the height and how he described himself as a utility rebounder, that's what Costa will need to kind of offset all the scoring and shooting and facilitating they already have.
All right. We'll quickly jump over to Stephen Shaw. Obviously, first round. I could do my own analyzing, but he's going to take Pat, and I think a lot of their captains are going to let him take Pat. So I'll just first round. Pat will go to Steven.
Yep.
Nothing I could do there.
No,
round
no,
two,
really argument.
Go ahead.
No, yeah, you can't argue that.
Round 2, I think he's pretty much going to go for a wing. Steven's not a guy who really has prioritized defense. He doesn't really need it. He's very much believes in the offensive game, rightfully so. If you were to tell him that the other team's scoring 19, he really just like, it doesn't matter. I'm going to put up 21. So I think he's going to want to play with a wing guy to get some kick out shots going. And I think the two people where he's kind of in that territory, possibly an Arvin or Gurgis. I don't know if any trades will happen. I don't see those guys going second round, but maybe they will. I never know how it goes. But just like a wing guy where you can kind of just toss it out to them and they'll shut up and shoot.
I think for the second round, he's obviously going to be late in the second round. I think Nick Germano is going to be available, and I think he's going to be the perfect pick to complement Steve and Pat Arsh. When you have Steve and Pat Arsh on the team, they can get to 21. They can. And Nick Germano he will be able to guard the second best guy on every team after, Pat's good at defense in his own right, but Nick Germano is such an incredible defender. He's an athlete. He knows how to set screens, and he will do all the dirt. If he ends up with Nick Germano, he would get all the dirty work done for that team, help them defensively. I think he would fit in perfectly, and that would kind of be the icing on the cake on a great team. Nick Germano's kind of probably a slightly worse version of AJ Clark, and that's kind of what with the new draft. That's what you're gonna have to end up with. You're not going to get AJ again, and I think Nick will do a great job filling those shoes. And I think that would be a great pick for him.
All right. And then finally for round 3, Steven's going to have the first pick in the third round, which definitely has a lot of room to play with. Again, I think he's a guy who's going to be relying on just getting some extra possessions, and who's going to help him do that? It's going to be Owen Bollinger. I think Owen Bollinger is probably the best pound for pound rebounder in the league, considering he's only like 5'10", I think he said on his draft registration. He's going to steal a lot of extra possessions. He's a guy that doesn't really shoot, which is going to allow Steven and Pat to put up more shots, or if he drafts a wing. So that's great. I think he should really gun for Owen Bollinger in the third round.
Yeah, I think Owen would fit in great, especially if he had Germano that said you can they're kind of interchangeable. Obviously it's different skill sets, but Owen's rebounding would be great. You could also go the Tyler Beraldi route and have a great backup point guard for Pat Arsh. If Tyler's still available in the third round, which would be a top tier third round talent, aligning with Steve's pick, maybe low tier second round. I think that would be great for the Dogs to have Pat and Tyler Beraldi swapping at point guard, maybe occasionally run a Steve Shaw two guards with Pat and Tyler, but I think Tyler would be great there. He obviously wouldn't get as many shots as he did last year, but I think he'd be okay with that to be with Steve, and I think he'd do great if Pat needed to get a breather and fill in those shoes well.
All right, let's head over to Nick Silva and the Black Bears. Round one, even though I don't think he should necessarily go with a utility guy, I think he will, especially because there's not. What I really think Nick Silva needs is shooting, and I said that in rounds 2 and 3. I don't think there's a lot of shooting options in round one, so I think he needs to draft like a top tier utility guy. Who is that? That's going to be either Cole or that's going to be AJ. He's probably going to want to run it back with Cole, considering he knows Cole's potential. I know they're friends, and they've had a lot of success together. So he should. I think he'll draft Cole, and I think he should draft Cole in the first round.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Cole, I think, you won a champion, you nearly won the title drafting Cole in the third round. I think you have to do it again. I think they'd be great. They'd be great again together as they were the first year. I mean, Cole, it probably is a bit of a reach at that spot, but not to say that Cole's a bad player, but if it's a mid first round, that probably is a bit of a reach, but it's a reach that you have to take if you're Nick Silva. You have to run it back, and they complement each other well, and I'm sure they would again this year.
Absolutely. And then I'm just going to kind of knock these off. In rounds 2 and 3, I'm saying Silva needs shooting. Silva has pretty much mastered everything of street ball, except he hasn't really flourished in the shooting. Not to say he can't shoot, but I think he's not the best shooter on the team 9 times out of 10. I think he should be going for Dan Gerges again. Someone who can kind of just be a great spark plug, get the teams, switch the momentum a bit with his shooting. I know that's a position that Dan would be very comfortable with. And then I'd also say he should draft for his fourth man a shooter as well. I'm putting yourself, Stylos, and if he could get Beraldi, get Beraldi.
Yeah, I agree. He definitely could use that shooting help, get Dan Gerges in the second round. I know Dan was his fourth man last year and did a great job for him and played well when it was him, Cole, and Dan out there. So I think Dan would be a great pick. I think he also could use a pure facilitator. And not to say that for the third round, not to say that Justin Mburu is a pure facilitator, but he's a point guard who can play make great handles and hit guys when they're open. And I think scooping up a Justin Mburu would be great in the third round if he gets that shooting already in the second round with a Dan Gerges type.
All right. We'll head over to Colin. We very much praised Colin in the past for his drafting. I think he's done a great job, and I think he's one of the better drafters in terms of he's so good at building the team for him, and he drafts the right pieces and puts the right people around him. I expect he's going to do something very similar. He has a kind of a very similar formula every year, and I think he's going to stick to it. So round one, I think he's going to draft a paint presence. If he could somehow get his hands on like a Campbell, an AJ, a Tyler Trapp, he probably won't get his hands on Carter, but if he could, that'd be great. So I think he's going to kind of draft that paint presence in round one. Obviously, help him out. He loves the picks, the pick and rolls. He always thinks 3 steps ahead, and he uses that big man as an asset for him. I think he's going to do that again. It's what he knows. It has demonstrated success. So Campbell, AJ, Tyler, or Carter.
Yeah, I completely agree. I would definitely say he's got to consider between Campbell Prentice and Tyler Trapp. I think he's a big man. They both bring that with size and the rebounding. And I think one of those two guys would be great. Both of them can score. Both of them can shoot. He would use them the right way. They could both set screens. So I would say he's got to go either Campbell or Tyler, assuming obviously if Carter's off the board, assuming those guys are available, he's got to take one of the two of those guys because they would complement him very well.
Great. In the second round, I think he needs like a defensive guard. So I did list myself, someone who it will be just as bought in as Collins, someone who shows up, someone he can definitely feel comfortable turning his back on when that guy is guarding a better player. So I did put myself for a defensive guard. If he can get like an Arvin again, someone who can play defense and run around the court, I think that would be a good move for him as well. but he very much has scoring himself. He can get scoring and rebounding out of his first round pick. If he can get a good passer and defender in his third round pick, that's a very well-rounded team that I think will allow Colin to flourish. So that's where I'll lock there. Who do you think he should take with his second round pick?
Yeah, I think he needs someone. I completely agree. I think he needs a good defender. I think you would be a great pick for him. I think he could run it back with Arvin. I think that'd be a good pick. Possibly CJ Puglisi would be a good compliment. And yeah, I think the last name I'd throw there is George too. Again, I mean, I know he had George last year, he had Arvin the year before. I think having that lockdown defender that can be gritty, can set screens, assuming he gets a score in the first round to complement him, I think that'd be a great, well-rounded team. And then, did you do third round too, or?
I did not do third round, but again, you can go. You can go first.
Well, it's going to be tough because him and Ian have run it so many seasons, and you can't blame that Ian for any of their shortcomings. I think he should go in a different direction, just try something new at this point. It's been 3 seasons in a row, maybe 4. I think he should, if Owen Bollinger does fall to him, which isn't a guarantee, that would be great to have someone you can bring in, secure the board, save some energy for Colin and his teammates when Owen comes in and is hounding the glass. I think Owen would be great for him.
Yeah, I think Owen's a really good pick, especially because he doesn't take shots away from Colin, which I know Colin will probably like. Um, Again, the thing with the whole Ian thing is like I think Ian would be a great third round pick for Colin, but they just have history. So I agree that he should switch it up. If their history didn't exist, I'd say draft Ian. He's a perfect third round guy for you. But with that said, yeah, I think he should take Owen. I think Owen has very much demonstrated that he's such a good asset. He has a one-dimensional game. He sticks to it, stays within his bounds. Um, and what Colin does is what I've said is he takes pride in really targeting the weakness of the other team and drafting Owen along with a score in the first round, defensive facilitator in the second round. Like I don't think his team would have any weaknesses, which would make that targeting of the opponent's weakness that much easier. All right, we will hop over to Jack Curtin. Jack Curtin had an incredible draft last year, built such an incredible team, allowed them to flourish. I think he should do exactly what he did in the first round last year, as this year as he did last year. And I think he needs a rebounder, someone to just sit under the hoop, who has a basketball brain, and he's in the Carter/Tyler Trap territory. So I hope he pounces on one of those guys.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think another thing to add to that is the pick and roll he ran with Carter was unstoppable. So he needs a big man. He needs someone with size. That would be Carter. That would be Tyler. That would be Campbell. Someone he can run that unbeatable pick and roll with because he makes the right decision 10 to 10 times is what he needs in the first round. And I think those 3 guys are more than capable of it.
Yeah. Round 2, I think Jack can kind of go in 2 different directions here, and I don't think either of them are necessarily wrong. If he wants to do a wing where a guy kind of just the catch and shoot sits in the corner, obviously he's going to draw a double because he just demands so much defensive attention, just how quick he is. You never know his next step. He's obviously going to draw some double coverage, which is going to open up someone in the wing. So if he wants to kick it out to an Arvin, even Cole kind of had that like side, like corner mid-range type game going on. He can totally run that back again. Arvin from 3, Cole from mid-range. Or he could do something where he tries to tap into the defense, which I think is very interesting. He probably won't be able to grab George. I think he could if Shorter's available, I think you should absolutely take him. If for whatever reason, again, Cole falls to the second round, definitely get Cole. If he wants a guy who can definitely cover his bases defensively and also help the overall ball movement, I think myself would be a good pick as well. But if he also wanted like a Gurgis, I think that'd be a good take as well.
Yeah, I think I agree with you for the most part. I think it would be great for him to have someone that he could, when he's running that pick and roll, when he's driving, have someone in the corner who could shoot like an Arvin. I think CJ Puglisi could be in that territory. And I think he would also be an excellent pick for the defensive side of things. I think Arvin would probably be the best bet because that's where you get a bit of the shooting and the defense. So Arvin would be the dream pick for him in the second round. CJ would be great. And George will likely, who knows if George will be gone or not, but George could also fill that role as well. And George has showed that he can shoot when he's called on, even though he doesn't take a lot of shots.
Yep. And then for the third round, his fourth man, I think if I'm Jack Curtin, I am gunning for Justin Mburu. That is an incredibly gritty player who pretty much will adapt to any team scheme. Jack is, again, I think he allows every guy to flourish while tapping into his own skills. And Justin, I think, will take full advantage of that. He's definitely not afraid to shoot, create his own shot. He's not afraid to get chippy with guys. I think Justin will be an incredible pick. And if he can't get his hands on Justin, run it back with Nick Germano. I think that was a great pick for him last year.
Yeah, I think Justin will be good. I also think Ian Hale would be great for him in that spot. Kind of a wild card who Ian, I wouldn't say he has a forte, but he does a little of everything. And that would be a great wild card to bring in off the bench, play with energy. I think Ian would play well. I think, he would adapt to Jack's system and his coaching style. And Ian could set some picks himself. He could shoot. He can drive. Ian really has transformed his skill set to do a little bit of everything, and he would play great with Jack Curtin there.
Great. Now we're going to go over to Connor. Connor's definitely going to have one of the earlier picks in the first round. He's going to be in some great territory. I think his first round pick is going to be incredibly important. I think Connor could I don't think Connor, I take that back. I don't think Connor can go wrong in the first round as long as he picks height. If he drafts Shu, I think that'd be a great pick. If he takes Ryan, I think that'd be a great pick. If he takes Carter, I think that'd be a great pick. If he takes Campbell, I'd say maybe a little early, but I like it. He needs a putback king, a guy who can sit under the hoop. Obviously, Connor's gonna be taking his threes, but also hopefully get a nice inbound scoring out of these guys. In the paint scoring from the inside scoring from these guys. So if he picks one of those four guys, I think that would be, a check in my book.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's got to go. If Ryan falls to where he is in the draft, I think Ryan would be perfect. I think, him and Matt Schuerk, it's kind of said like I think they were a good duo, but at the end of the day, you've had it 3 years in a row now, and it hasn't gotten you far enough. You got to try something new. It's not even a slight to Matt Schuerk. I think if Ryan is available, you've got to take Ryan. Take someone who's been a captain the past few years, a top scoring talent. He's almost 6'5". He would be. I think they would complement each other very well. It would be another scary pick and roll in the league. And Ryan shooting when he's hot would be just another element where they would be a very tough cover. So I think if he can get Ryan, he has to.
I think I'm gonna kind of fight back on the Schuer thing again. I think the whole play style between the two hasn't been a recipe for success. Those two are such freak athletes. They can really they can make you gas when the score is 3-2. They literally just run around the court. You feel like you're at the circus. And I think if they just did that, but incorporated more inside scoring or prioritize the drive, I think they'd be pretty unstoppable, those two, rather than just living in like shooting, missing, rebound, run to the 3-point line, shooting, missing, rebound, running back to the 3-point line. I think if they can break that cycle and prioritize inside scoring, I think drafting Shu again would be a good move. Do you want to rebuttal or do you want to move on?
I mean, I would just let her roll, but they've done this for 3 years, and we've been talking about it for 3 years, and they revert to the same habit over and over again. Where it's kind of just Connor Fu playing catch with Matt Schuer because Matt's a freak athlete and Connor's a great shooter, and when Connor misses, usually Matt gets the board, but they don't prioritize the right shots. If they did change their shot selection, sure, maybe it could work, but they've had 3 years.
All right, we will head over to Alex Pisacreta. I think Pisacreta is arguably in the best territory to draft the best player that suits him. And I think he needs to shoot for a stretch big this year. And that could look like Ryan, number 1, stretch big. That'd be great. I think he could land right with Carter or Campbell as well. Those are 2 guys that definitely sit on the inside, but can give you like a 1 to 2 3-point, make every now and then again, which is great. And I think that's what Pissy needs.
Wait, sorry, who'd you say again for Pissy?
I said Carter, Campbell, or I think his top priority should be Ryan.
I would say Carter. I don't know if Ryan's gonna fall to wherever Pissy is. If he does, you got to take him. But yeah, I think Carter Campbell will be great. He definitely needs that. He needs that height. He needs that rebounding. He does need shooting later on the round because that is not one of his strong suits. He can shoot, but it's not what he's known for. But I think there's more size early on, more shooting later on, where you can kind of prioritize getting someone with size that'll clean the glass for him early on, set good screens for him, and then find that shooter in later rounds.
Great. And round 2, It's got to be shooting. That's exactly what I wrote. I think it's Gergis or Arvin. I don't think he should try to. I don't think he should really do anything different. If they're not available, I think he should. Maybe this is overvalue, but maybe he should get Justin. I originally had Justin for his third round pick, but if Arvin and Gergis aren't available, I think he should just just take Justin.
Yeah, I don't know. That would be a bit of a reach, I think, for Justin, but he does really need someone who can shoot the ball. And that, yeah, you took the words out of my mouth with Arvin, or Dan Gergis would be great in that spot, especially Arvin, because Arvin brings the defense. But yeah, he needs some shooting, especially if he drafts a pure big. I mean, granted, let's say he ended up with Campbell. Campbell can shoot pretty well. It's kind of a stretch big, so they would be covered their bases there. But I do think, yeah, he needs some shooting, and I think Arvin would be great for him again.
Perfect. And then with this last round, I originally wrote Justin, but if he can get someone with grit like Jesse or Beraldi, he definitely can't go wrong. I think with that, Pissy can really build a versatile team. And obviously, Justin, I assume, Jesse, I assume, and I know Beraldi are guys who show up and definitely play harder than 99% of their opponents. And again, these are just little things like getting extra possessions, keeping the streak alive. Those are guys that can help Pissy really do well.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, you're gonna
No,
keep
go ahead.
going. No, yeah, I think Justin would be a good pick for him. Depending on who depending on what their profile looks like, I think I would fit in well in his system. I think Pete Stylos would fit well, bringing his shooting. So I think there's a few options there. I mean, I don't think he's really going to need one of the pure. I think he'll be able to get the glass clearing, the grit, the pick setting earlier on, to the point where he doesn't need it, where he needs either a facilitator like Justin Mburu, or someone who can hit some shots like myself or Pete Stylos. And I'm going to throw Ian out there again too, because Ian has really improved his shot and can hit some mid range as well. So I think any of those guys would be great.
Yeah, Ian was a great toss in there. Last but not least, Resendez. I think he should try to mimic exactly what he had with Ian last year. Unfortunately, he doesn't have the first overall pick, so it's going to be hard to get Louis. But if for whatever reason Louis falls, he needs him. I would almost encourage Resendez to try to trade up to be in Louis territory. I think Resendez would really. It could take the weight off him in terms of scoring, which I think he enjoys if he doesn't need to be as aggressive. But yeah, I'd be gunning for Louis. But if he can't get Louis and he can't really get a shot creator in round one, I think he's got to get a big offensive presence, and that's going to be AJ or Campbell, or call me crazy, Pat. Not big offense, but in terms of like a shot creator, elusive guard to help him out, Louis or Pat.
Yeah, if Louis does fall to wherever he picks, which could happen. Who knows? It could happen. I know some other captains might want size, which could let Louis fall. They would complement each other so perfectly. Those two could probably contend for a title. No, like just with their skill sets match so perfectly. That would be great if you ended up with Louis.
Same with their demeanors.
Yeah. Honestly, yeah,
Those very relaxed guys.
They're relaxed, but I think they're both gonna compete very hard, and I think they would be great. Maybe if not, go the Carter Brzezinski route and have a Twin Towers down there with Resendez and Brzezinski and whoever else they support themselves with would work. So I think either of those routes would be great.
Yep. In round two, I think he needs to prioritize defense. He does draft. Looking at the Honey Badgers and the Spartans, who won Depoy last year? Is that Campbell?
Yeah, it was Campbell.
I guess I can't say that he doesn't prioritize defense, but I think he needs to really gun for defense, and that could look like Arvin, George, CJ, or myself. Against guys who really aren't going to take away from the top two, being Resendez and whoever he takes first round, but cover bases defensively.
Yeah, well, you mentioned cover bases defensively, but someone we have not mentioned yet today, who was a nominee for Defensive Player of the Year 2 years ago, Dennis Tavares would be perfect for him and would be
Absolutely
take someone
right.
out of the game. I would love if Nick Resendez could get Dennis in the second round. I think that would be a great pick. I think hopefully he's available around where Nick is, but I think they would complement each other well. Again, he could build a really big team. He could build a skilled team, but Dennis, with the defense he brings, would be perfect in that spot.
You bring up Dennis. I made the mistake of doing this just kind of off of memory. you mentioning Dennis just kind of blew up so many of my notes I wrote down. Like looking back to like Steven, if Steven could get Dennis in round two, huge. Silva isn't really gonna need Dennis if he doesn't, unless he gets Cole or can't get Cole in round one, he can gun for Dennis. Dennis can fit in and mold into any scheme. If he especially honestly, Jack Curtin could go for Dennis in round two, and that'd be incredible. Connor Fu can go for Dennis in round two, and he would complement him very well. So I guess you kind of just blew this up in front of me because I made the mistake of not doing it with the entire roster next to me. I tried to do it out of memory, but you're absolutely right. Dennis would be a great pick. And then for round three, I think Resendez needs another spark plug. Everyone knows that Baraldi game last year. Where were you when Baraldi had his game? And I think he can definitely allow the fourth men to flourish, thrive, play into their strengths without the guilt of like Resendez such a with his team culture, he doesn't make the fourth man feel guilty for taking 7 shots a game. So if you're a fourth man, I think going to Resendez is going to be a great opportunity for you to be in the spotlight. And who can handle that spotlight? Ian, Baraldi again, Stylos, or you. I think those are the four main guys he should gun for. The spark plug, the thing, the guys that people like and will definitely get loud when they get hot.
Yeah, I'll throw one more in there. I'll just build off what you said, throw one more in there. Luke, I think Luke would play great with them, be it for them. If Luke can get his shot back to where it was 2 years ago, because Luke was pretty good shooter 2 years ago, kind of lost a bit of that stroke last year. I think Luke could be a great pickup for Nick and complement them. And he's obviously transformed himself. And I think he's a good defender now, which would help. I think he'd fit in great. I think he'd appreciate that how Nick is very generous with his rotations, and I think Luke would be able to flourish with a bit more time on the floor. So I think Luke would be another one that Nick should absolutely consider in that
Luke
third
is another
round.
guy that I didn't really have in mind when I did this off of memory, but that's another great point. Looking back, I think Jack could use his third round pick on Luke. I think Resendez can use his third round pick on Luke. I think Pissy could use his third round pick on Luke. But very true. That is another guy that if he gets hot, the crowd will get loud. And I think that's an environment that Resendez tries to create, where everyone kind of wins.
Yeah.
But that is pretty much it, guys. Stay tuned for our next episode where we will do our mock drafts officially. There we'll have obviously the exact order and we'll know exactly who's available. We'll build it together. Michael will do one, I'll do one, and then we'll compare it to see when the actual one happens. But it was such a pleasure to get back in the studio, talk ASL, my favorite topic to talk about. And we will catch you later. Bye bye.